There is a building on the edge of NASA's Space Flight Center in Greenbelt, Maryland, that does not appear on any public map of the facility. It has no sign outside, no employee directory listing, no budget line in any publicly released NASA financial document. Workers who have been employed there for decades say they have never been inside it and do not know anyone who has. From satellite imagery, it appears to be a completely ordinary government building. Walls, flat roof, standard government architecture that blends into everything around it. But 3 months ago, a retired NASA contractor, who spent 31 years working sat down with a small independent research group and described what happens inside that building. What he described has been quietly circulating in the research community ever since. And the reason it has not gone mainstream is not because it lacks credibility. It is because the people who have looked at it most carefully are genuinely uncertain about what to do with what they are hearing. The program he described has been running continuously since 1983, 42 years, through 9 presidential administrations, through budget cuts that gutted every other NASA program, through the Challenger disaster, through the Columbia disaster, through every political shift and funding crisis that reshaped the rest of the space agency around it. It never stopped, it never shrank. If anything, according to this contractor, it grew. He called it by the internal designation he knew it by during his career. He referred to it only as Clearwater. Whether that is its actual classified name or a name used internally by the people who work on it, nobody outside that building can confirm. But multiple independent sources who have come forward separately over the past decade have used the same word. Clearwater. So what is Clearwater? According to the contractor, Clearwater is a continuous monitoring and analysis program focused entirely on a specific category of deep space signals that do not match any known natural or human-made source. Let me be precise about what that means because the precision matters enormously here. Space is full of signals, radio waves, X-rays, gamma rays, gravitational waves, signals from pulsars which are spinning neutron stars that emit incredibly regular pulses of radiation, signals from quasars, from supernova remnants, from the cosmic microwave background radiation left over from the Big Bang itself. Scientists understand all of these. They have them. They have models that predict and explain them. When a new signal is detected, there is a process for identifying its source and fitting it into the known framework of astrophysics. Clearwater, according to the contractor, exists specifically to handle signals that cannot be fit into that framework. Signals that arrive on frequencies that natural astrophysical processes do not produce. Signals that carry what analysts inside the program describe as internal structure, meaning they are not random noise. They contain repeating elements, patterns within patterns, mathematical relationships between components that passive astrophysical processes simply do not generate. Since 1983, according to this contractor, Clearwater has logged 847 such signals. 847 signals over 42 years that NASA's own analysts have been unable to explain as natural phenomena. And every single one of them has been classified. Not peer-reviewed, not shared with the international astronomy community, not published in any journal, not presented at any conference. Classified, locked inside that building in Greenbelt, Maryland, and the network of secure facilities connected to it. Now here is where the story becomes impossible to dismiss as the claims of one disgruntled retired employee. In 2019, a researcher named Doctor, who was working as a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Arizona's Steward Observatory, was conducting a routine survey of archived radio telescope data from the Very Large Array in New Mexico. The VLA is one of the most powerful radio telescope systems on Earth, and its archived data going back decades is partially accessible to researchers for scientific study. While analyzing data from 1997, Doctor found something that stopped her cold. A 23-second signal recorded on September 14, 1997, on a frequency of 1420 megahertz. That specific frequency is known as the hydrogen line. It is the frequency at which hydrogen atoms naturally emit radiation, and it is significant because hydrogen is the most common element in the universe. The hydrogen line is considered so significant in the search for extraterrestrial intelligence that it is internationally protected from radio interference. Scientists have argued for decades that any technologically advanced civilization attempting to communicate across interstellar distances would logically use the hydrogen line because any other civilization capable of receiving the signal would know to look there. The 1997 signal Doctor found in the VLA archive was broadcasting on the hydrogen line. It lasted 23 seconds. It came from a direction in space with no known radio source, and it contained internal mathematical structure that Doctor described in her initial analysis notes as consistent with an encoded transmission. She began preparing a paper. Before the paper was submitted, she received a visit at her university office from two individuals who identified themselves as representing a federal agency. She has declined to specify which agency. They reviewed her analysis. They informed her that the signal she had found was a known artifact already in the possession of the relevant authorities, and that publishing her findings would conflict with national security protocols. She was legally obligated to observe as a recipient of federal research funding. She did not publish. She left her postdoctoral position 6 months later. She now works in a completely unrelated field. The signal she found in the 1997 VLA archive matches the description of one of the 847 signals logged by Clearwater according to the retired contractor. The date, the frequency, the duration, the directional origin, all matching. Which means Clearwater had already that signal 2 years before Doctor found it in the archive. Which means NASA knew about it in 1997 when it was recorded. Which means the monitoring infrastructure to detect and classify these signals has been running continuously since at least 1983, exactly as the contractor described. The internal structure of the signal Doctor analyzed before her notes were reviewed by the federal representatives has been partially reconstructed by independent researchers working from her pre-visit communications in which she described her findings to colleagues. Those colleagues remember what she told them. And what they remember her describing is a signal that contained what she called a base 11 mathematical sequence. Base 11 is significant because human mathematics and virtually all known computing systems operate in base 10, which corresponds to our 10 fingers, or base 2, which is binary and corresponds to on-off states in electronic systems. Base 11 has no natural human origin. It is not a system that human technology produces accidentally. A signal encoded in base 11 mathematics either comes from a civilization that counts differently than we do, or it was deliberately constructed to be obviously non-human. Neither of those explanations is comfortable. Now let us talk about the broader context of what 847 classified signals over 42 years actually means. The famous WOW signal, which was detected in 1977 by astronomer at Ohio State University's Big Ear Radio Telescope, is considered the strongest candidate for a signal of non-natural, non-human origin ever publicly acknowledged. It lasted 72 seconds. It came from the direction of the constellation Sagittarius. It has never been detected again despite numerous attempts. It has never been explained. And it is called the WOW signal because wrote the word WOW in the margin of the computer printout when he reviewed the data. The WOW signal is public knowledge because it was detected before the infrastructure to classify it was in place, before Clearwater existed, before the protocols that Doctor encountered in 2019 were established. If the WOW signal had been detected after 1983, according to the retired contractor, it would have gone directly into Clearwater, and the world would never have known about it. How many WOW signals have there been since 1983? According to the contractor, 847. Not one every few years. Not rare anomalies that might be explainable with better data. 847 signals significant enough to be classified and studied continuously by a program that has survived 4 decades of political change and budget pressure without ever being cut. The resources dedicated to Clearwater are not small. The contractor described a program with a permanent staff of over 200 analysts, physicists, linguists, and mathematicians working in rotating shifts around the clock. A budget that has never appeared in any public NASA financial disclosure. Infrastructure that connects to listening posts on every continent and in space. Linguists. NASA has linguists working around the clock on signals that supposedly do not exist, analyzing transmissions that have never been publicly acknowledged. You do not hire linguists to study natural astrophysical phenomena. Pulsars do not have language. Quasars do not have grammar. You hire linguists when you have something that might be communication and you want to understand what it is saying. For 42 years. 3 months ago, the retired contractor gave his account. 6 weeks ago, a second independent source, a former signals analyst who worked at a facility in New Mexico that he described as a Clearwater relay station, confirmed the program's existence in a separate conversation with the same research group. He added one detail that the contractor had not mentioned. He said that in 2017, for the first time in the program's history, the mathematical analysis team inside Clearwater produced what he called a partial translation framework for one of the signal types they had been studying for years. A partial translation framework. Not a full understanding, not a complete decoded message. A framework, a starting point, a structure within which some portion of what these signals contain began to resolve into something that the analysts could work with. He did not know what that framework revealed. His clearance did not extend that far, but he described the atmosphere